Folks, a meteorologist, Matt Barentine. The newest numbers have just come in. We are now looking at a Category 3 major hurricane here with Delta, a Category 3 major hurricane that is now Delta. So it just got ramped up to Category 3 strength. Looking at the 3D imagery of it here, and we can see that it is forming an eye. It is very tightly wound. It's a very small system, but when they're really small like this, that allows them to rapidly intensify because they can wrap themselves up real tight. And that's exactly what this storm is doing. It is a very small, very tight system, and it's headed towards the tip of the Yucatan Peninsula, and that's going to get there tonight. So folks in Mexico really not going to have a whole lot of time to get prepared for this. This is headed straight for them. It's going to hit the northern tip there of the Yucatan Peninsula here as a major hurricane. So they are going to get a very nasty blow here tonight with this storm. Here are the latest numbers. Like I said, it is now a Category 3, winds of 115 miles per hour, and this is so much different. Now, I know we always like to compare storms. It just sort of gets in our head to do this. Like, oh, remember Sally? This one's going to be like Sally. Every storm is a lot different. Sally was barely moving. This one, look at this, moving at 16 miles per hour. That's a huge difference in the 2 or 3 miles an hour that Sally was moving. This gives it a trajectory and makes the forecast, at least the track forecast, somewhat easier because a strong storm going at a good pace takes a lot to sort of nudge it. You know, when it's not moving hardly at all like Sally, it didn't take much, and it was very, very hard to forecast the exact track. This is moving along. It has a trajectory. That trajectory is going to take it towards the northern tip of the Yucatan here later tonight. So they are in trouble there in Mexico, dealing with a major hurricane on the way. Here is the latest track. They haven't shifted. They're being a little conservative here. Well, I would not say a little conservative, just a very, very little conservative here, because there are some track shifts going on with the models, mainly to the west, okay? So that's the good news. But still, the consensus of the models is somewhere towards central Louisiana. And zoom on in, and that would be right around looks like just right around Baton Rouge almost, where the center part of the track is at. We are still in the cone though, so we can't rest easy. But most of the models are trending more towards the center of this track or more towards the west. I hope that trend continues. There's nothing guaranteed that it will, but that's what most of it is. Most of the modeling is doing, and I'll show you that here coming up in a minute. Now the actual strength. I'll back this thing up a little bit. You see they have it as Category 3 here. What's likely to be happening is that it's going to be weakening here as it comes on in. How much it has time to weaken, that's going to be the big question mark for folks in Louisiana as this storm comes in. They do have some hope of weakening here because it's going to run into some issues. There's a lot of dry air, this beautiful fall air that we've had, all this brown stuff there. This little patch of green, that's actually leftover moisture from Gamma, which is basically all falling apart. And you can see it has its own little patch of moisture that it's bringing along with it, this green here around Delta. But it is going to run into some dry air in the northern Gulf. It's also eventually going to run into some cooler water, but it's going to take time. And this is unfortunately why it's likely to stay a major hurricane right up through at least the central Gulf, because those water temperatures are plenty warm to support a major hurricane. As it comes in though, last minute it will start running into some cooler waters. Hopefully it has time to take up some of that cooler water and weaken itself. And then here we go on Friday, the upper level wind. So here it is offshore somewhere off of Louisiana, and very strong winds. Now this is the biggest factor working against it. And once again, this will all depend on speed. If it was moving as slow as Sally was, 2 or 3 miles an hour, this would get ripped to shreds. It wouldn't have a chance. But it is going to be moving at a good clip. So basically it's going to sort of run into this stuff and start to weaken a bit, but doesn't weaken enough to make any significant difference, because either way they're probably going to get either a low-end Category 3 or an upper-end Category 2 making landfall. So it still will be a significant storm, once again most likely for Louisiana. So let's look at some of the modeling. I know let's look here at what we got with a couple of the different models. This okay, I guess the thing was taken down. This is the European model. So this is the European model, and what it's doing, let's go ahead and put this in motion, going to Wednesday at lunchtime. I'm going to back this up just a step just so you can see that overnight tonight going into tomorrow morning is when they'll likely get a blow right there along the tip there of the Yucatan. Now this is important too, because I talked about this yesterday, is where exactly would this shoot through? The closer it would come to the tip of Cuba, the closer the storm likely would end up coming to us. But now it's going more over here. And we're pretty sure that at this point that'll hit the very tip of the Yucatan. So that's pushing it off more to the west. It's riding around a ridge in the mid-levels of the atmosphere. Noontime on Wednesday, it's just off the Yucatan. And then once again, this is the European model, one of our good models here that we always watch out for every year, one of our two main models that we keep a very close eye on. Thursday at noon, you can see how far west it is at this point. It's made its way all the way over towards the Louisiana-Texas line. And then now it's going to start to go around the ridge, so it's likely to start turning more to the north and eventually to the northeast. Now, where does that make that turn? Well, that's going to be a big factor for folks in Louisiana. It's hard to, probably not going to make it all the way to Texas, but it'll be real close. And you can see this is the Lake Charles area once again. Poor folks there obviously dealt with Laura earlier on in the season, and they might be looking at a very nasty system here as well. So the European model is now dragging this thing all the way over to the Lake Charles area. So that is a shift. That is a shift to the west. That takes it well away from us. We would only get some fringe effects if it goes that far west. So in our area, a little bit rough at times on Dauphin Island or Fort Morgan Peninsula, but inland areas, just some rain bands. We'd have to watch out for the possibility of some tornadoes in some of those rain bands, some small tornadoes. But we wouldn't be getting a direct hit if it goes that far west. We're getting definitely a very, very glancing blow. So that's the European model. Let me actually, what was the time? I want to make sure, let's look at the timing of the landfall here too. They have it coming in early Saturday morning. All right, so that's the European model. Let's look at the American model, the GFS model. And the GFS, let's go ahead and put this into motion and let's see what it does too. Once again, hitting the northern tip of the Yucatan Peninsula. So moving this westerly. See, once it hits the northern tip of the Yucatan, I mean, it's already at our longitude. It's already there. So now it keeps working its way off to the west, riding around this ridge in the upper levels of the atmosphere. You can see as we get here to Thursday at lunchtime, it's in the Central Gulf. There's Thursday at lunchtime, I'm sorry. Thursday at lunchtime, almost getting about the same spot that the European was. The GFS has a stronger, better defined system. And then we get into noontime on Friday, directly south of central Louisiana, and Saturday at midnight has a landfall there, central Louisiana. So now our two main models, the European model has a landfall early Saturday morning in Lake Charles. The GFS American model has a early morning landfall central Louisiana. This, once again, we'd be on the outside looking in at most of the weather, most of it. Now, we'd get some rain bands coming through for sure. It'd be a little rough, once again, at our beaches. But this wouldn't do the damage anywhere close to it that Sally did along our local beaches. And it was to confine most of the serious damage over into Louisiana. So once again, outside looking in, very glancing blow if this is the way that works out. And this is, like I said, what the models are trending at here today. We saw some of these trends yesterday. Most of the trends yesterday were for central to southeast Louisiana. Now we're trending more towards central to western Louisiana with the modeling. And once again, this is different than Sally. Everybody's like, oh, well, Sally, the models kept shifting it. Sally was a different beast. It was a storm moving 2 miles per hour. When a storm is only moving 2 miles per hour, that's essentially that there's nothing really steering it. It's barely moving, nothing is really steering it. So it just sort of bobbled along, and it was extremely hard to forecast. This is going to be moving 15 miles an hour. That means it has momentum. It's a big, strong storm. It has momentum. It's going to keep moving. It can be nudged a little bit to the right or left, but it's generally going to keep moving in its trajectory. So the forecast for the track is better than what we would have seen with Sally. Doesn't mean it's perfect, obviously. Things could still shift around a little bit, but it's not the storm that Sally was, and we always got to be careful. We always think back to the last storm that we saw and sort of compare and contrast, and it's not the same. Every storm is a bit different. Once again, I'm going to give you the latest numbers here from the National Hurricane Center. These just came down at 10 o'clock here. It is now a Category 3 hurricane. It is a major hurricane, so we've seen, I wonder what that is here on the year. We've had, so it's now a major hurricane. So I'm thinking it's the third major hurricane of the season. So I'm just pulling up some numbers here. So yeah, that becomes the third major hurricane of the season. So we've had, obviously this was the 25th named storm, 9 hurricanes, 3 of them have become major hurricanes. So third major hurricane of the season now with Delta. So Delta, a major hurricane, and moving to the west-northwest at 16. Like I said, that's the difference here. Like you said, you can't compare this to Sally. This is a much faster moving storm. It's a very small, very tightly wound storm here this morning. That's allowed it to make this rapid intensification that we saw started yesterday afternoon, and it's went through overnight, and it's really tightened up its core and become a much nastier storm here. And here's the forecast path. Now you look at this. See, at one point the Hurricane Center has it as a Category 4. Let me give you some numbers on it because I don't always, because it gets a little confusing. I put too many numbers up here, so I try not to get all of them up there. All right, let me see. Actually, it's hour 60. There it is, 130 miles per hour. So they have it as it comes across. So remember, the waters here are still really warm, mid to upper 80s. This is right before it runs into some upper level wind shear. And then it's going to make this turn somewhere. And keep in mind, the Hurricane Center still is keeping us in this cone. So I don't want everybody to completely focus off this. But once again, most of what we're looking at brings this thing west to us. And that's, I don't wish it on folks over in Louisiana. Obviously, they've already dealt with Laura this year over in Lake Charles. They definitely don't need it any more than we do. So it's just a bad situation all the way around. Once again, it's going to be a very strong storm, likely doing some weakening before landfall, but it's likely still to come in as a significant storm, either upper in Category 2 or lower in Category 3. 10-mile-an-hour wind difference doesn't make a whole lot of difference to folks at, where it comes in at. So it's still going to be a real nasty hit for folks likely in Louisiana. So there it is. That is the latest here this morning on Delta, the fourth storm out from the Greek alphabet now. So obviously a record-breaking season, 25 named storms and counting. 28 is the record from 2005. So there'll be a couple more junk storms out in the middle Atlantic. I guarantee you that. So that never hit anything. So we'll almost certainly will tie or break that record. Once again, a lot to watch out for here over the next few days. Once again, we are still in the cone, so I don't want people to completely take your focus off that. We still need to prepare. I have a feeling, though, this cone, not a feeling, I know this cone will tighten up over the next day or two, and we'll see a narrower cone as we get more model data in and as the hurricane hunters keep flying down. Keep in mind, I know we're still talking a number of days out here. It's Tuesday, we're talking a early Saturday morning landfall. So we're still talking a solid 4 days out. So that cone will get narrower as it gets closer, as they get more data in from the hurricane hunters. Hurricane hunters are flying down there likely as we speak. So I'm sure they are actually. I can see if I can pull one up. See, oh, there we go. There's one flying down there right as I speak. Yeah, so there it is. There's the hurricane hunters. They're flying around in it right now, looking. They're just starting their crisscross. This latest one here. So they crisscross through a whole bunch of times to pinpoint triangulate the center. Once they find that center, they can get their data, what they call the drop zones, right down into the middle of it. You can see right now the only wind speed they found is 44. That'll definitely change once they start getting the drop zones down into the center of that storm. It is a very small storm, so they're going to have to really tighten up their grid to get down into it. So that's what the hurricane hunters are doing now. They're getting more information every time they drop those data collectors down into these storms. That data gets sent right back to these models that we use, and it's so valuable. You can tell the difference in the modeling here from when they don't have that data to when they do. It is much better because they can get the real precise fix on exactly where the center is. Because before the planes flying into it, the only thing that we have the satellites trying to get a fix on the center, so it's not perfect. The planes, though, when they get in there, they get us a very good fix on the exact center of that storm, and that's why it's so valuable. I know it seems dangerous what they do, and it is, but the data is just invaluable. We got to have it, and it's just a great tool that they go out there and they do that, and they bring this data for us. All right, so somebody said Mobile will be ready for anything. That's exactly right. I know we're talking about looking at the models and showing this coming more west of us here with most of the models. But yeah, be prepared, be ready. It doesn't hurt anything just to keep an eye on this and be ready. We'll, of course, be tracking it for you. This was the 10 a.m. update. The next big update will be at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, 10 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, then 10 o'clock in the evening. Those are the times we get the new forecast tracks. There are intermediate advisories, but the ones that are big are the 10 o'clock and the 4 o'clock ones, both AM and PM. That's when we get the new forecast tracks in, and gives you more. We get a lot more detail at those hours. We'll be, of course, checking back in with you as we go through the day, letting you know what's happening with Delta. Stay tuned to Fox News. For everybody that joined here on Facebook Live, I do appreciate it. Have yourselves a great day. Enjoy. It's going to be a decent Tuesday out there. Won't be too bad. Pretty nice day. But then, of course, we'll be continuing to watch Delta here at Fox 10 News. Take care now.